in love with trust. Let me just tell you that those words, and you know me, Niraj, that's part of the juice between us, is all about the words, right? The language and how it works us. And, Jason Silva has a wonderful little tidbit recording where he talks about the power of words, that they are incantations, they are spells, they are manifesting tools of reality that we can, if we understand them, we can really dance with them fully and completely. And so I was in ceremony with a brother last summer, and he was somebody like a lot of us, myself included, has done a ton of personal work to go back and heal his wounds, show up accountable to his expression in the moment, be aware of where he's created issues for others and been accountable to that as well. I mean, that's really the best we can do, is be 100% responsible for who we are every minute of the day, right? And when we do wrong, to go make it right with another is the work. And so we were deep on the floor of grace. And you know what that means with all the implications of that statement.
I've been there.
You've been there. If you've been to grace, you understand when I say you're laying on the floor in the heart of your story, letting it just float in the ether. And so he was sharing a lot of the same things that I go through, probably you go through too, and that is this fear of the unknown, this what if, and we're constantly trying to anticipate and safeguard against and be ready for, to live so much in the future. We have a quick story came up in our world just this last month. So with the fires that came down our valley in summer of 2020, when the rains came in 21, we had this wash of gravel that came off the mountain and completely clogged all of our runways of water off our mountain, and wiped out one of our culverts, one of the main culverts that takes the water under our road and into the local creek, the Kashawa Creek. And we knew it was going to be a problem. We all collectively as neighbors had to agree on a plan of action. So it took some time and to arrange all the right people and materials to basically dig the whole thing up, put in a new culvert, expand and extend and protect this throughway of water. And we did it after the first rains in December, recognizing that the ground would be easier to work with. And so all of that said, we have this one neighbor who lives, breathes, eats, sleeps fear. That's just his way. And he constantly projects the absolute worst case scenario in every situation. And generally, we don't have any contact with him because he's our neighbor on the road. We drive past each other, but he's just not the person we hang out with. And I realize part of the reason is he creates so much drama with that fear. Like, oh my God, we have to do this and we have to do that. And now that we've done this, we've now got to go do that and da, 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 da. And we had one geologist look at what happened with our basically kind of a landslide. And he said, this rock that's coming down your hill is 2 million years old. You might not ever see this kind of effect. I mean, imagine, 50 truckloads of gravel washing off of our mountain. So the way the fires went, the way it wiped out the chamise, the way the rock released from the hill, the way the rains came, the way it found its way down to this culvert. He said, the odds of it happening like this again are very, very slim. And what you're doing is enough to protect against, the 100-year flood. Even if it comes every 5 years, you're good. Well, this neighbor knocking on our door late at night, wants to call us every hour and talk it over. And I realized he lives so much in the future, so much fear about the future. He is absolutely miserable in the now, and miserable for anyone to be around him. And I looked at him, and these words that came through with this brother on the floor of grace earlier in the summer, and he was like, brother, you just got to fall in love with trust. And I think at that moment, he looked at me like I must be on drugs, because what? Fall in love with trust? What does that mean? And I knew at that point there was no point in trying to explain to him the trauma drama loop that he kept, spiraling in his life. But it was such a solid example of where I don't want to be in my life. And so this idea of falling in love with trust has worked me, not only, in ceremony, but in my real life. Like, how much am I willing to really trust what's happening right now? Let me, hang on, guys. Let me get this back. Let me get us to share my screen. And then I will open up the slides. All right. So falling in love with trust. It's an interesting statement, falling in love with trust. So let me just ask you before I unpack it with you, what comes up for you in your belly, Niraj, when you see those words, falling in love with trust?
Being in the moment, being here now.
Being here now. Okay. Any more about that?
Well, I think that's, for me, that's maybe the portal to falling in love with trust, is like, how are you feeling in this very moment? Where are you physically and mentally and emotionally? And knowing that the next second is okay, we're living it, the next second, and from there, the next hour, the next 2 hours, the next 5 hours, and the next day. So I think for me, it's that gradual process. And I've come to your beautiful property, Edie, and I've done my own spiritual work as well. And I think that's how it started for me. So when I see this is like, that's my portal to falling in love with trust.
Okay. I love that. Being present, being here in the now, not projecting into the future, not assigning fear to things that have not yet happened, right?
Yeah.
Kent, how about for you?
It's been a interesting transition for me with trust. First of all, there's an ease to it. First of all, if you can fall in love with trust, there's just an ease to it. There's a lot of people and a lot of things I can't trust, but if I can trust that it's just part of the human life that we're having to face in our human journey, then they're just obstacles that are out there that we're going to learn from. And so I just got to trust that, it may not all be roses out there, but I just have to trust that it is what it is. And if I can trust myself that I'm going to get through it, there's, like I said, there's an ease to it.
So beneath that expression you both have put out there, that there's a couple of like pillars that fortify that belief. First of all, I call it my big toe. Some would call it their POV, their perspective. For me, it's always been that life is happening for me, not to me, right? Einstein said, the world is either in your mind a hostile universe or a friendly universe. If you are coming at life through the lens of fear, you're going to have a very different experience than somebody who's coming through the lens of love. Coming through the lens of love makes trusting even the really difficult things, that ultimately they have some meaning, right? That there's some value, even though we may not see it in the moment. It may only become evident in retrospect, in hindsight. after we've seen a scenario play out, we might look at something and go, oh, yeah, I see how hard my divorce was. I see how difficult that business failure was. I see how challenging that relationship was. But on the other side of it, look at what I learned. Look at what I gained. Look at how much of myself I was able to claim back. More than ever, parts of myself that I'd been giving away in relationship or giving up to a scenario. So oftentimes, trust is something, we don't like to dwell on the past, but I love to go look at the past through that lens of love, because I can always come away with some value proposition that isn't evident in the moment. And when I do timeline work with people in ceremony, I'll have them map their timeline and put the hard things and the high things on their timeline, and then look for what are the gems, what were the things that happened to you that in the moment felt overwhelming and devastating, but over time you can look back and say, gosh, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have met that person. If I hadn't met that person, then this thing wouldn't have happened, or that wouldn't have opened up. Even depression, I can look back on my years of depression and see them as a catalyst for deeper inquiry, a catalyst for pursuing new ventures for myself to find deeper meaning for my own life, right? So if we can get to that core idea that life is happening for us, not to us, as Einstein says, we'll claim the friendly, not the hostile definition, as we stay in the present moment and we can look back and see the blessings and the benefits. That's sort of the foundation for what I'm saying here about falling in love with trust. Can you relate to that, either of you or both, in some way?
Yeah.
Yeah. My goodness, that's beautifully put.
So if it's true about what's happened in the past, it's likely still true about what's happening in the present, right?
Yep.
Even if I don't yet understand the deeper meaning, the silver lining, the blessing of the moment, it would be difficult for me to ignore all the blessings of my past and say, oh yeah, everything that's happened up till now has turned out to be a blessing for me, even the really hard stuff. But to somehow isolate what's happening in the moment has no logic to it. Like there's enough momentum in our story, in our collective story, to allow me some grace, even in the moment, even in the heart of the difficulty that we're going through. So that comes to mind when I think of falling in love with trust. But it took me even deeper, really deep, when I first came through. And this often happens when the channel sort of opens and these words, they feel very profound to me when they come through. I go, I oftentimes, in this case, I was with this gentleman, and I said, this one, it's been hitting me for the last hour, and now it's hitting me over the head, upside the head. And if I don't speak these words out loud to you, I feel I will be remiss in not sharing this with you. So I shared the words with him, and we were able to unpack a piece of it, but it continued to work me like, all right, trust, I just need to trust the moment. And that wasn't enough. I had to fall in love with it.
Mm.
Falling.
You know what?
Yeah.
Edie, I have a question for you, and this is kind of what I'm struggling with these days. I know life is, I trust the moment. I love it. But for me, I guess, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but I feel like I'm having a hard time loving the moment. Because I'm so in my head from work. That's why today I'm like intentionally taking some time off to do spiritual work, because it's been a tough 4 months for me personally, a little bit, challenging. I still want to do more spiritual stuff. But yeah, how do you, for those of us who are kind of critter minded sometimes, how do we kind of like, I don't know, just fall in love with the surrounding, love the moment. How do we get out of our own head into that? I mean, what do you do?
So I'm coming to this. Thank you for asking that question, because I'll tell you, I've had a couple moments this week that I didn't love.
Yeah.
No. There was no seduction of happiness there. There was nothing that brought me into a sense of love. And so perspective is what brings me back into a place of groundedness. Like, everything is temporary, everything is transient. It's like the weather, it's flowing through my life. So yeah, I don't maybe love this moment exactly. I don't love the list of to-dos I need to get through. And I recognize that I still have choice about every minute of how I'm going to spend my day. And if my career or my activities that I have signed up for aren't like the weather, if they keep, holding, like if it's a constant torrential downpour and I'm drowning in my own choices, the consequences of my choices, then I can love my moment of reflection about that, right? So it isn't that we love what's happening to us, but I can fall in love with the recognition that I have choices to do it differently if I want to.
I love that. Wow.
Can you hear me now, Edie?
I can. Hi, Kim.
Yay.
Welcome.
Well, it took me a while to figure out how to do this simple task of,
Well, you're
of
here.
being seen and being heard.
Well, we love having you, being seen and heard. What have you picked up so far? What's grabbed you?
Just looking at that, what does it mean to you? What does that statement mean to you, falling in love with trust? Is everything is going to be okay. And if it's not okay at the end of it, it's still going to be okay. That is kind of my mantra now when people are, gas is going to be $10 a gallon and the aliens are coming. I'm like, it's all going to be okay.
So that's the broadening of the perspective piece, right? If in the moment it doesn't feel okay, without attaching to the future or blaming the past, we can still broaden the perspective to our core mantra of life is happening for me, not to me, even if it doesn't feel that way in this moment, right? To hold that lens.
Absolutely.
Let me add another statement to this mix. This one came a long time ago, that love only knows expansion. Love only knows expansion. And a lack of love creates fear. Separation from love creates fear. And that's where we experience contraction in our lives, right? But if you think of love only knows expansion, like our source code is love, that's a core belief of mine. My body sort of backs that up. My very physical survival depends on love and connection, right? So it kind of makes sense that it is our source code. And by the way, if somebody doesn't agree with that, I cannot go down the road with them, because if they don't understand that love is our source code, there's no healing path between us. So if love is our source code, that we are, some people believe in a vengeful God, some people believe in a God that mingles in the matters of man. I do not. I believe that we are sourced from love. I believe that we are the God, the consciousness that is in charge of this entire experience that we're having. And it is our separation from that truth that creates suffering in the world. But I also recognize that even man's inhumanity to man has kept us moving forward down the path. And I'm gonna share with you a slide here in a couple minutes that's going to demonstrate what I'm saying quantifiably in a way that is sort of inspiring and enlightening about we as a human species are actually getting better at this. It may not look like it right now because we're in the middle of this insane conflict and polarization and disconnection, but it is the nature of our beingness. It is a survival necessity for us to survive as a species, that we come together through love and connection. It just is. So when I say falling in love with trust, what I'm really saying is falling in love with life, exactly as it is. And so falling in love with life, falling in love with self, falling in love with trust, it's all the same statement. It's falling in love with the grand plan, that no matter how difficult things seem in the moment, there is a plan, a trajectory of human expansion that is just happening, whether we are tapped into it or not. So for me, the falling in love with trust is a process of courageously courting your most authentic self. To fall in love with trust is to fall in love with yourself. Now, if you remember, I'll go on here to slide number 2. This slide is sort of the context for everything that I teach. It's the healing conversation questions. Number 1 is, are you ready, willing, or able to have the healing conversation? People who are not ready, willing, or able, probably the reason for that is they default to, this is a hostile world. Love is not our source code. And so I can't even get them to understand that, you know, there is a healing conversation to be had, that there is some potentiality out of the pain that we're in, out of the fear that has engulfed us. Number 2 is, do you believe we can live in harmony? And every person I ask that of says, I'd like to. And then there's always the but and a dot, and their dot could be, but those people, they won't ever do the right thing. Or those people, there's a lot of bad people out there. There's always some level of withholding, not going all in on the idea of harmony because of the beliefs that we have about other people. So that gets us to number 3, which is, do you know what you believe and believe what you know? Do you understand the difference between where truth comes from within, and where fear comes from outside of us, right? Do you understand that? And so we unpack that when we talk about our biases, our believe it as so's. And that gets us to some of the greatest biases we have. And those are those that we hold against ourselves. You know, so question number 4 is, do we love ourselves enough to heal? If not, why not? Like, there is no logic in the behaviors that keep us from loving ourselves, doing the things that are in our own enlightened self-interest. So I keep coming back to, if not, why not? Why is this so hard to fall in love with trust, to fall in love with ourselves, to fall in love with what's happening, even when it is painful and difficult? And I'm often brought back to the metaphor of giving birth. And I don't love the labor pains, but I love the outcome. So you can even through that lens begin to see that it is giving birth is challenging and difficult. And there are going to be times when it's scary and messy and wet and bloody and uncomfortable. And you think you're going to die and you think you can't survive what's happening in your body. The human species is going through that collectively right now. So there's a lot of fear and resistance. So when I use the words, you know, falling in love with trust, people will look at me and go, trust is that thing you do when you set aside fear and you go in, you know, anyway, right? To courageously move forward, courage, core, the heart, to fall in love with going forward no matter what, is a powerful paradigm shift for each of us, and not always easy to live in the moment with that. So what is your role in the healing conversation? And it is to take trust by the hand and love it. Love it, because it is where our wisdom comes from. And I love this slide. You know, what is trust? Who do we trust? How do we trust? It's tricky, because in a world full of lies, full of fear, full of projection, full of certainty about how things should go, you become a bit of a unicorn. when you say that you love trust, that you're willing to go all in on trusting that everything is happening exactly as it needs to in this moment. Even the behaviors of people that are harming others, it's not that what they're doing is in service to the evolution. It is about finally moving to a place where that energy, those dark shadows of ours, come into the light. And that's what we're seeing right now, is this huge expansion of shadow coming into the light. So this map came to me a while ago, and the word fulcrum, like there is a tipping point, there is a crescendo that we are reaching as a collective consciousness to move out of this state of perpetual fear into a state of perpetuating love. And I shared this with Kent the other day, and so he helped me sort of fill in some of the detail here. On one end of the spectrum, where we are attached to the human experience by fear. And I just want you to close your eyes for a minute and just kind of get to a neutral place with your body. And when I say that we attach to life by fear, what happens to your hands? What do fearful hands look like when they're trying to hold on to life? What's the physical appearance of hands trying to hold on by fear?
Grasping.
Isn't it kind of, you turn white? I mean, I don't know, maybe.
White knuckled?
White knuckled, right?
Right.
Or
Cam, what was your thought?
Grasping.
Grasping for dear life, right? You're like holding on for dear life, right? Kent?
Or like a fist.
A
Sweaty palms.
Sweaty. What are the implications of sweaty? That we might lose our grip, right? Like the body has really powerful validation for these words. Are they sourced from love or are they sourced from fear? And this idea of being attached to life by fear, sweaty, grip. What's our breathing when we're attached by fear?
Panic.
Panic, shallow, hyperventilating, right? Like the body has a whole language. When we are attached to something by fear, our body is racing with hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, and this raises our blood pressure and causes our heart to be more inflamed, and this brings on disease. I mean, you can viscerally feel in our body what these words represent in real life, how they manifest, right? The other side of the spectrum, from agitated to activated by love, engaged by love. Tell me about your hands and your body now. What's different when we shift out of being attached to life by fear versus engaged with life by love? Relaxed. What do your hands look like when it's not gripped? How do the hands hold love?
I think it's more open face, and for me, I'm visualizing just kind of relaxing in a chair, kind of just like that you plop in a nice cushioned chair. Like that's what I feel or visualize.
Okay, and your breath? What's your breath look like?
Very mellow.
Very mellow, chill, at ease of being, right? Right? At ease of being. So, this one side, the left side, where we are agitated because our attachment is to a fear-based model of thinking for the human experience, we are putting all of our power outside of us. We've accepted that everything that's happening outside of us has the power to hurt us and harm us. On the other side, the power is internal, and we know that whatever happens, we are enough to handle it. Whatever it is, I can handle it. I can navigate all the variables that come. Doesn't mean I won't be afraid from time to time, but I'm not going to wallow in the fear. I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to be creative and curious about what's happening. I'm even going to be grateful for what's happening. Instead of resisting what's happening, I'm going to say, quick example. I have a little pinched nerve in my back. We've been nursing at the doctor and I for a few months. He ordered an MRI for me. I went in last week to do the MRI, and I'd never done an MRI before. They should have asked me, are you claustrophobic? And they didn't. And I got into the tube and I was all of about a minute and a half in there, and I had a panic attack. And they had to pull me out and cancel the procedure. And I was shamed and embarrassed. And the tech was like, don't, please, it happens. It's nothing about, it just is. Some people just being confined, not being able to move, the loudness, the whole thing. It's not a thing that you need to be ashamed about. But for a week, it took me deep, deep, deep into my trauma of being held down against my will at an early age. And it, like all these old flashbacks of scenarios where I was out of control physically. And I went back in last night to repeat it with a different machine, slightly larger. Only this time they let me have music, they put something over my eyes, and they gave me some anti-anxiety medicine to help me get through the procedure. In this week, I've done more work on unpacking layers of somatic trauma that are still deep in my story that never would have happened had I not had that freak out panic attack, where I was just drenched in fear for the whole experience. But I became curious about that experience. And actually now I've reached a point of gratitude for it. Before I went in last night for the repeat, I was like, hey, I learned a ton about myself because of that very difficult experience. It triggered something. I looked at that trigger and went deeper and deeper and deeper into my story to unpack that trigger. And I found the power within myself not to let that old trigger be present in the current moment. And I was able to get through the procedure without a hitch last night. The more we become grateful for what's happening, even the really difficult stuff, we become curious about the benefit that it's offering us through a new lens of perception, the lens of love versus the lens of fear. For me, every time something difficult happens, I then become curious. Like, oh, wow, what am I going to learn from this, right? How is this going to serve me? So fulcrum is an interesting word, and I grabbed it out of the dictionary because I really think the definitions are important. It's the point on which a lever or similar device is supported, something used to spur or as justification to support a certain action. So that fulcrum of trust, that place at which we finally hit a tipping point, I want you to just hold that idea in your mind. And now I want to share with you some real big magic here. So a few years ago, a friend recommended the book to me, Letting Go. And because of the green screen, it's called Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by David R. Hawkins. And I fell in love with his work. And I bought another one of his books, Power versus Force. And I bought it, but it sat on the shelf for about 3 years because every time I picked it up, I just didn't feel right. And so I put it back down. I picked it up last summer and it was right, finally. It made tremendous sense to me. And so let me kind of give you a high view of what he created here. He believed, his theory of the case is that there is within the body an exquisite sensitivity to the collective consciousness, that each of us, when we get fear out of the way, when we fall in love with ourselves and trust, and our inner guidance system is in high service for every moment of our existence, every choice point that we're making, we are feeling the way. He said that inner guidance system, that central nervous system that is tied to the communal nervous system of our existence, he says we can choose truth over false every single time. So what he did is he began to map consciousness, and he went to about 250,000 people, and through applied kinesiology got them to give him feedback about where these words fit on this spectrum. So from basically a 0 down at the bottom of the scale to 1,000 at the top of the scale, they assigned words, basically levels, emotions, process, life view, God view, to each of these places along the way. Have you seen this before, Niraj, this map of consciousness?
You know, not this particular one. I'm very, very curious about this. I love this, in fact. Wow.
Okay. It has completely engulfed me, because what I got out of this were several things. First of all, his book, Power versus Force, if you look, 200 is the tipping point from power versus force. Below 200, in order for things to happen, they're operating from a place of fear. You have to force an outcome. Above 200, you're operating through the lens of love. Things happen by the power of love, and that the power of love is greater than the force of fear, right? Ultimately, the more people we can get operating above this midpoint, the more we offset the fear below the midpoint. And so here's just to kind of unpack it a little bit. If you think of shame as being about 20 points on this scale, he says it's logarithmic in its expansion. So 20 to 30 isn't just 10 points, it's the power of 20 to 10. Power of 10 to 20 gets you to 30. And so it's a big jump to go from 20 to 30, 30 to 50, and so on. And so with these 250,000 people over several years, he would have them calibrate where these words and the meaning, the definition of these words, like fear. Is fear, is fear 500? No, not if love is 500. Fear is below that. Is it 400? No. Is it 300? No. Is it 200? No, it's 100. Okay, so there's fear. Where's desire? Desire go above or below fear? And so he began to, through muscle testing, you all know about applied kinesiology. If you've ever been to a homeopathic doctor, they'll hold a poisonous substance up to your heart and then press on your arm. And if you go weak, it's not good for you. If you stay strong, it's good for you. And so he would put envelopes of artificial sweetener under people's desks, and then envelopes of just a white inert powder under people's desks. And then they would test that. And 100% of the time, the artificial sweetener tested in a way that made us weaker, not stronger. So he says, basically everything above the red line here, above this tipping point at 200 is life affirming. Everything below the red line is life constraining, right? Life reducing.
Edie, I'll just say I do a lot of Excel spreadsheets, and that's kind of where, this right here this is the best thing you've said to me in the past 2 years since we've met, or 3 years, whatever, 5 years. This is the best. This right here, I just took a picture of it. I'm gonna use it to check in every hour, because just how I feel and where am I on the scale in that moment. So thank you. This is really, really helpful. Thank you.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
He says most religions have come in above the line of 200, some in the 300, 400, 500 realm, but they also have dogma like the Old Testament, where God is very despising and vindictive and vengeful and condemning, punitive, heaven or hell. That is not a concept that exists above the red line. It only exists in a forced world. You will do this or you will go to hell, right? It negates the whole tenor of free will, which is the core of the human story, that we can choose our path, right? We can choose how we want to respond to things. So he does his books. He's got like 6 or 8 of them, and I've got almost all of them. I mean, I've become quite the student of his work. He passed away in 2012, and nobody has passed on his teachings except through his writings. I may even be breaking some rules and sharing this map the way I am now. They're very, very careful with their, he said he wanted the work to stand on its own without a lot of people coming in and stealing or interpreting, but I think he would appreciate how I'm using it at least. So summing the book, he says, above the line is complex and nuanced, that life is never black and white. It isn't all good or bad. Not all people in the government are bad. Not all people in the government are good. Not all doctors are good. Not all doctors are bad. Not all politicians are good. Not all politicians are bad. Even within individuals, not all of them is bad. Not all of them is good. We're nuanced. It's complex. And only when you are above that red line can you begin to see the shades of gray. You can begin to understand that each of us is doing the best we can with the setting of our story, how we came to be in this world. You can also understand collective trauma and the role that it has played in how we're showing up now. We are afraid of things now that haven't existed for 1,000 years. We're afraid of things that are part of our parents and our grandparents' story that no longer exists today. One of the things I love so much about Gen X and Gen Z and all the younger gens now that are coming along is they look at the discrimination against LGBTQ people and go, what? Or discrimination against people of color and go, huh? How can anybody hold that perspective, right? And so we are evolving. He says, below the red line, there's a lot of resistance to life. There's a lot of angst and frustration with life as it is, versus above the red line, look at the life view up there. It is what it is. It just is. It's weather. It's not that anybody's trying to cause us harm. It's not that that the world is hostile. No, it's just, it is. It's there for us to learn and explore. So several of his books, one of them, I'm working my way through this one now, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, he sees this not just as a map, but as a ladder, as a way of helping people navigate. Like if you meet somebody who's feeling a lot of grief, you can go to what does that grief feel like in your body? It makes you anxious. And so how do we counteract anxious? We move over here to desire and we ask, what would feel good to you? And so you can build a roadmap for people based on where they're starting from. Now, here's where it really gets interesting to me. This next piece, he said, if you think of the map, this is superimposed on it. He says the logarithmic movement below the red line is a perpetual spiral downward. So it's like if you have not reached that midline of 200, you are going to struggle to rise above it. It's like you're in a river that's running fast and it's so fast that you just can't even imagine getting out of the river. You're in survival mode and thinking. But once you cross this threshold, this 200, now the arrow is a perpetual spiral upward. It's like there's the momentum of above the line helps to move us very quickly up into higher states of consciousness. Below the line keeps us locked into lower states of consciousness. So now imagine the energy that happens at that midline when some people are moving up and some people are moving down. What does that middle ground feel like and look like? What would you just imagine that center point right there looks and feels like?
Probably uncertainty, because you're teetering between. And I thought it was interesting that trust was just above that red line, I noticed. So when you get to that trust, you're.
Let's go back there. So just superimpose in your mind those arrows going up versus down. Look
Right.
what's right there. That crossover right there to go
Yeah.
from courage to trust.
Wow.
Yeah.
Positive, negative.
Positive, negative on the bottom, positive on the top, right? Like
Right.
courage, just the word courage, like courage looks to me like it is a major jolt of potentiality, right? For somebody to even have courage to trust
Yeah.
something different than what they're experiencing right now. That you're fighting against the forces, that negative vortex down, and being called, I call it the beckoning and the becoming, to moving up above that. Niraj, is this like resonating? Is this kind of blowing your mind?
You know, I'm having a crescendo moment. Because I had this thing happen to me a few years ago when on my path, and I'm just trying to remember what it felt like, to be honest with you. I mean, I just love this graph. I love this chart. This is amazing. I'm just, wow.
Wow. Wow. I know, when I was like, why doesn't everybody know about this? Why is this sitting on black and white pages and not being brought to life in conversations across this planet? This beautiful human downloaded, met his highest self. Those who talk about him say he was operating, he could speak of it because he had been through all of it. He understood and had transcended each of these levels to meet this place. Now, he would never call himself a number, but based on the writings, people who've read his work say just reading his book will raise your consciousness, because now all of a sudden you have a visual of what consciousness maps like. And you can see somebody who's really caught up in fear and anxiety, how hard it is for them to break out of that negative cycle. Really hard. Like they're going against the forces of their history, their genetics, their cultural, their religious orientation. Their entire construct has kept them in this negative cycle. He said, on average, the average human will only elevate 3 to 5 points in their lifetime.
What? Wow.
3 to 5 points, right? Like, I know, Niraj, the first time I read that, I was like, dang, I wanted to get from, 175 to 310. I mean, 2 to 3 points, that doesn't feel like much. I mean, I might go from 200 to 203 or 4. That doesn't feel like much. But remember, it's a factor of 10, right? And here's where, to me, the real magic comes in. He said,
before you go on, Edie, how is this similar to Abraham Hicks? Do they say the same? Because I did Abraham Hicks for a few years, many years ago. Are you familiar with their work, or?
Not much, no.
Okay, never mind. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sure other people have begun through their own lens, shared something similar. What's powerful to me about this is he calibrated these numbers with 250,000 people.
Wow.
Like he kept testing them, and all right, one person over 700 counterbalances how many people? Is it 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 70 million? Oh, look, everybody says we got strong at 70 million. That becomes a statement of collective consciousness, right? So one person over 600 can have an impact on 10 million. One person over 500 can impact 750,000, 400, 400,000, 300, 90,000. here's where the collective starts to get really interesting to me. 12 individuals at 700 is equal to one avatar. Now, the word avatar is what he uses to represent Krishna, Christ, Allah, Buddha, the great teachers that we've acknowledged of all time. So, you know, one avatar at 1,000 counterbalances all the negativity of our human species, all of the fear. That much love, that much full, unconstrained love, pure source code love expression washes over humanity, just washes over humanity. And he said the aggregate score of humanity in the 1920s was 180. He says as of 1980, humanity calibrated at 200. So in his later books, I think he said we're up to about 204 as a species, right?
Wow.
As a species. So when everybody says, oh, it's getting so dark, no, it's getting lighter. We are moving. We are, love only knows expansion, even through the shadow, even through the darkness. It will bring us forward, right? He says, this is the one that I'm really, this one grabs me around my app and the breathing together piece that I'm so present to, and that is 15% of a population over 200 counterbalances the other 85% under 200.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm taking this in, so thank you.
Wow. 15% can offset the other 85. So go ahead.
You know, I guess I love this. This is kind of more of a philosophical question, maybe, is let's say, like, I guess, like, where are we going as a humanity? Like, if we're all raising the vibration, if we, let's say all of us get to 700, I'm just making this up, or that's the highest number we can get to, right? What happens then? Are we like merging with source? Is that what happens? Or like what's the end game, if you want to call it that?
We are unconstrained source.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
I'm loving this. I'm smiling. I'm happy.
I know. Believe me, I've been so deep in this now for months, and I just keep coming back to it over and over again. Like, if we could just acknowledge that there is a path, that I'd like to believe we could live in harmony. This is the story that gets us to the I'd like to. It's baked into us to figure this out, right? And to come to it collectively, not Dr. Hawkins' statement of truth or Edie's statement of truth, but that we test it collectively. Like, you could bring a group of your friends together and do some of this calibration. What feels true to us? Now, there's some work in the book. He says, if you involve people that are under 200 in the kinesiology, they don't fare well, because they cannot even conceive a potentiality above 200 because they are so locked into the downward spiral below 200. Now, he also says that you can be operating much of your life above 200 and through wounding and triggering and negative circumstances find yourselves back under 200 through fear, anger, or, you know, but this is what consciousness is. It's not that we are enlightened beings. It's that we come alive to our experience in the moment and make better choices about that. You know, so life is happening for me, not to me. Falling in love with trust, falling in love with trusting my own inner guidance system, right? That inner guidance system maps this out. So this is what inspires me, that all activities over 200 have a profound impact on the exquisite sensitivities of our collective consciousness. There it is. Take a breath. Our little circle right here. We can raise some consciousness right here.
Love it.
Imagine 15% of us across the planet taking a breath of loving intention at the top of every hour, maybe once a day, but that begins to create a momentum and awareness that we're in this together, that we are divine co-creators of lights on this planet, that as you hold that light It illuminates my light and I illuminate your light. We can engineer our physical experience to elevate us to our highest expression spiritually on this planet. That is my hypothesis, and I'm sticking to it, because man, oh man, that is the truth that is worthy of my engagement in life right now. So the app, of course, I can tap that button and I can see that Edie took a breath at 12. And occasionally I can see that Kent did the same thing. And Lee, right now I only have about 4 or 5 people who are doing the app with me. But that's okay. I don't take it personal. I just know that the conditions are not yet there, that people begin to recognize that trust, breathing together, is the first step. So this is a beautiful quote from Charles Eisenstein. He says, if I am not brave, what reason have I to hope others will be? Courage and cowardice both are contagious. Courage to trust can be contagious. My choice establishes a principle of human nature. It declares not only who I am, but what a human being is and what the world shall be. Each choice is therefore a prayer. Each breath is a prayer. Our choices scaffold divine creation. That is why synchronicity so often congeals around bravery, courage to trust. Synchronicity is the snapping of the laws of probability as reality shifts to align with brave choices. Seeing that creative power, one knows the despair was based on false premises. The ego's cautious logic is reversed. The ego says, give me a guarantee that it will work and I'll be okay, then I'll do it. The ego says, promise me that enough other people will resist, and then I'll resist too. Prove to me it won't be in vain. Guarantee that others will join in. God says, show me that you want a more beautiful world enough to actually risk something with no guarantee and fall in love with trust. Then you will see results beyond all reckoning. It is your time for choosing here. You will recognize when it is. No one can escape that feeling of recognition when the moment comes. If you have read this far, that time is close. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The rehearsal is over. Right? Rehearsal is over. Pretending that we have no power in this moment is over. But attaching to fear is not empowering. It's about attaching to fear to force people to see the error of their ways, to see that they're stuck below 200. That does not elevate them. Only when we are elevated in ourselves, right? So let's go back and look at this slide and take it one more time into your consciousness. Only when we are operating from up here can we impact what is happening down here. Kent, I want you to speak to that.
Well, I operated below the red line for quite a while, and it didn't serve me. It took me down a dark rabbit hole, and I can't say that I knew what I was doing to crawl out of that, but I knew it did take some trust, some hope, some reason and understanding and forgiveness. I recently had I'm in a poker group of people that I've been playing with for 20 years, and recently had a confliction with beliefs with one of the men, and I wasn't proud of how I reacted, but I did react. It triggered me, and that is why I asked Edie to sit with me last week, and she straightened me out. But I've mended my ways. I'm going back to poker as soon as in a week or so. And I felt in my reasoning and in my emails to the poker group that I was shedding some light. There was some power there where I was operating above that line and admitting I was wrong and how I was triggered and why I was triggered, and that we just need to trust that we all have our own truths. And if somebody doesn't agree with me, I just need to say that their truth is good for them. I don't have to agree with it. And I can be thankful that their truth isn't my truth, but I've got to respect that that's what they believe in and that's where they're at. And, I'm who's to say that my little flicker of light in my email did anything. I think it does. I think when we start playing again, they're going to see a change in me. And they are promising not to touch on this subject or anything. And I'm like, no, touch on the subject. I'm going to be fine from now on. And I told them why. So I think there's some power there. And I don't know if that answers your question either, where you want me to go, but
Well,
I really feel that now I'm operating above that line, and I see that I was triggered, and now I know just to come in the place of respect of people and their truths and what they trust. And
when we have, so you've heard me say that the healing conversation, all of this body of teaching that's coming through and around me is the bridge between our curse of certainty and a field of pure potentiality. We have been operating in a curse of certainty for a very, very long time. Sometimes we call it the patriarchy. Sometimes we call it religious dogma. Sometimes we refer to it as, I think of it as sort of a doctrine of dominion, that there is an ideological supremacy, that there's one right way for us to be. And that curse of certainty is below the red line. It is below 200 because it says it's my way or the highway. You believe what I believe or you're wrong, right? And that's the heaven or hell. It's the theocratic insurrection that we're experiencing every day right now, that there's a whole group of humans that believe that our country should be founded upon and act as if there's one God. And there's only one way to exist under that God. And that curse of certainty is a constraint on the pure potentiality of the human story, right? So what you're saying is, I'm no longer attaching to a curse of certainty. I'm letting go of that for the pure potentiality of hindsight, right? Like, we're going to look back on this time and we're going to understand things if we open up our lens out of bias and fear. We're going to look back and say there were things that people who believed one thing got right and people who believed another thing got right. And the problem is we're not in pursuit of truth right now. We're in pursuit of that black and white, who's right, who's wrong. If we were really in pursuit of truth, we would be dismantling the institutions and the structures that prevent us from trusting what is the right next step for us. We just don't even trust. We don't trust anybody to have an unbiased agenda right now. We just don't. So all we can do is go inward, back to that. Fear is putting our power in the hands of others. Love is claiming our power from within, right? And sourcing from within. So let's go one more slide here.
Edie, actually, I want to go back to Ken's
Yeah, go ahead, please.
beautiful share, actually. And Ken, I loved it. It kind of, I think I saw this in, I think, the push for this event. Maybe you wrote it, Kent. But I think a question that surfaces for me is, in this world where there's so many realities, right? Everybody has their own reality, their own perspectives, their own lens. How do we not let that trigger us when perhaps, there's an issue that does, maybe affect us, actually. I don't know.
Tolerance, tolerance, tolerance.
Tolerance, Cam.
I love it, Cam.
And Kent, I loved it when you said it's their truth.
Mhm.
And that absolutely should be respected. I have told Edie many times I was born to amazing parents. I am blessed every day that I had the parents that I was born to. And one of the main things they taught us all of our growing up years was everyone's opinion is valuable to them. And there's no reason to disrespect that. It is their truth. It is valuable to them. It is the way that they believe. Okay. Okay. I had 3 different friends. The first one that said to me, you know, we don't have a lot in common, but I wanted you to be my friend because I am a really negative person and I try to surround myself with positive people. And I kind of laughed at that at first, but then down the line, another person said that to me, and down the line, another person said that to me. All the negative Nellies and Debbie Downers out there that are below this line still have hope, even if it's only just one conversation that you have with them.
That's right.
That bring them back to being positive. But I loved it that you absolutely got it, Kent, when your logical brain even said, you know what, that's their truth. Okay.
Well, I think there's almost a red line through my brain too, because I know that, but it's also like a muscle. You got to keep practicing it, because it did set off a trigger last week, you know, and I knew that it was a trigger, but I'm identifying it now. At least I'm building that muscle, and I know rather than to let that trigger snap me, to go, oh, well, that makes me angry.
Mhm.
Keep it more internal. Why is it making me angry? And approach it that way, rather than snap at that person and tell them that they're wrong. They're not wrong. They're right for where they are right now.
For what they believe, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So and that helps me too, to, you know, kind of put things in perspective too. So it's just a matter of practicing and observing and not reacting.
And when
Tolerant,
you feel
tolerant.
yourself being angry, I would offer that maybe there's a deeper story there, that at some point your truth was discounted by another, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a friend, that just because somebody doesn't believe what I believe, I don't have to become angry about it. I can just see that we come from a different lens of perception on the situation. I don't have, but if I'm angered by it, I just invite you that anger is a reaction to the moment that may have roots that go way back in our story. I know I'm super sensitive to being gaslit, because that is something that happened in my family a lot, when I felt like I was speaking truth and my family was like, no, there's nothing wrong with who we are and what we're doing. And 6 therapists later said, no, that was not normal. That was not good. That was, you know, like gaslighting is part of my history, and I'm easily triggered when I feel like I'm in a situation where somebody's gaslighting me. When I'm angered by something, it is, I mean, this is where I get real curious, like, wow, where is that coming from? Where is that reaction coming from? And it usually gives me a healing moment to let go of some old part of my story, and how it's playing out. So I'm loving this, and I'm also sensitive to time, so let's keep it within the parameters here. This came to me a while back, that, you know, love is the fuel. It is the animating vital force that keeps this planet spinning, that keeps our hearts beating, that keeps the story going and unfolding through time. Free will is the vehicle. We get to choose our path, right? We get to choose how we want to be, how we want to respond to this experience. And meaning making is the road we choose to travel. If you use Einstein's language, are you traveling a hostile road or a friendly road? Are you choosing to embrace Dr. Hawkins' perspective that we are in fact evolving as a species. We are moving up, to go from 180 to 200. Think of the logarithmic expansion that represents. It's not 20 points. It's 180 to the power of 10 that gets us to the next level, right? So we as a species are moving away from fear as our operating system. We are more and more defaulting to love, asking bigger and better questions about scenarios. And if the questions we ask perpetuate a right and a wrong, a good and a bad, a heaven or hell outcome, we're asking the wrong questions. We have to keep expanding our thinking around how do we solve for X? X equals love. And in your poker game is this beautiful little microcosm of life that you are solving for X in the poker game. And the X is, I'm not here to make anybody wrong. I'm just here to hold my life, my views, and I don't have to defend them. Boundaries are a big part of this. People below the line, below the red line, have very poor boundaries. They are projecting their truth onto others all day long. People above the red line recognize that they are whole and that their truth is sovereign and they don't have to prove it to anyone. Right? It's a beautiful way to think about this. And so the magic for us, life happening for us, not to us, is in the lens of perception that we are willing to engage with. And for me, the lens of love has all the potentiality for healing, all that ails us, for moving us, maybe not all at once, maybe generationally, maybe someday, if we got to 15% of humans above 200, that would be enough to wash a beautiful river of love and healing across the other 85%. There would be no effort. It would be effortless to bring the rest of the planet into consciousness. But if we're hanging out below 200, we are in the realm of forcing people to come to our way of thinking. It's only when we each stay above that line, where we stay in sovereign truth, where we source love from within, that we are able to impact others. So the way home in all of this is to go inward and to just keep holding light for ourselves, hanging out with people who also are doing the same so that we don't get lost in the chaos. Part of the breathing app, you've heard me say it takes 3.5% of a population to shift cultural consciousness. Maybe that's all it takes to shift that 15% into high gear. Maybe it's not about getting the 85% that are really stuck, but if we all, 3.5% of us, 11 million people in the United States, were breathing together and holding space for a new potentiality, instead of fighting what's happening, we just elevate the conversation through breath. So let's wrap up here. I'm going to take you through some sort of Q&A here. And this is a model. This is a facilitation tool that I used a lot back in my old days as a facilitator trainer. It's called ORID. O is for objective, R reflective, I interpretive, and D decisional. And it's a nice way to sort of get pieces of this presentation organized at the end. So objectively, what words stand out from this lesson? I'm going to go to each of you and have you share one or two words. I'm going to bring us out of the slides so that we can do it together. Stop sharing. There we go. So what words stand out for you? Niraj, what if I took everything else away from this presentation, what would you hang on to?
I would use trust, honestly.
Trust.
I think trust and I think the scale, those 2-3 images really helped out. I'm going to be using that a lot.
Good.
Checking
Good.
with myself every few minutes, every hour, or whatever it is.
Good. Cam, how about for you? What stands out for you?
It's always love. Love is always the thing that stands out to me on every single thing that you're doing, Edie, that you're helping others with. It's all about love. That is the source.
It's
for sure.
It is the true north of the human trajectory. We are headed there. Some of us will get there sooner than others. I shared with Kent, there's a song that's just working me right now. It's one of the ones that Lisa Niraj put on one of the CDs that went out. And it's, we're building a bridge. No one goes alone. We all go together. We each have a stone. We don't know where we're going. The blueprint is in our bones, right? Mm-hmm. Each of us has a stone to add to this bridge. No one goes alone. We all go together. The blueprint is in our bones. That blueprint is love. Mm-hmm. That it's, we will figure this out. We don't have to have all the answers. Falling in love with trust is falling in love with what's happening now in every choice I make, choosing trust from love. Now, this is the other piece that I love to think about a lot. If we come from a unified field of light and energy where time and space have no hold on our perception, love is all we are. That is who we are. To bring that into a physical realm, which is what I believe the grand experiment of the human story is about. Love has models of physical expression in a physical world. So trust to me is just another word for love. In unified space, oneness, pure energy and light, it's one thing, but when you bring it into a physical world where boundaries are the story, skin, space, buildings, trees, all physical structures have boundaries, right? Trust is love of boundaries. So falling in love with trust is also falling in love with boundaries. Where do I end and you begin? Falling in love with myself is my way of understanding what that boundary is. So I can be in a group of people that do not agree with love as their source code. They're corrupted by the malware of fear from their setting, their story. I can still have boundaries with them, Kent. I can sit with my brothers in a poker game and love them and not get hijacked, right? How about for you, Kent? What jumps up for you?
Actually, that very last graphic really got me. I'm a visual guy, and saying that love is the fuel.
Yeah.
Well, fuels, you put that in a tank. So I'm thinking the gas tank is trust. Yeah. So is your gas tank half full or half empty? Are you running low? The cool thing is you can always fill up that tank.
Yeah.
And I think we do. The more we go through shit and learn from it, our gas tank is filling up.
Right. And we're sourcing from within. We own the nozzle.
Right. Exactly.
Right? It doesn't come from outside of us.
And we have the power to take that nozzle and stick it in the fuel tank and fuel up. I mean, we have the power to do that.
That's right.
And if we just keep driving without fueling up, we're going to run empty. So
I think a lot of humanity is running on empty right now. And we're not being fed from outside of ourselves. We're being fed fear and scarcity from outside of us right now. So the only way you can fall in love with trust is to fall in love with your own inner guidance system, to trust yourself, to trust your own wisdom to navigate this. I trust that no matter what comes at me, because I'm sourcing from love, because that's what feels good in my body, that's what feels right to me, I'm going to be okay, whatever happens. So here's the next part. So that was objective, now reflective. What emotions arise from this conversation? How does it make you feel about this model that I shared with you today? Niraj, jump in. I can see the grin.
I feel elated. I feel like, wow,
Hopeful.
abundance, elated, love. That's my thing. Really,
Good.
this is like really empowering. Actually, I love it.
Good. Cam, are you there still? How do you,
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My phone is weird. I feel great too. I feel great. I know that there is hope. Number one, even for the ones that we don't think there's hope for, there is. And there again, it's all because we are here to serve each other and love each other, and that's the bottom line. So yeah, I feel great.
Good. Good, 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 good. How about for you, Cam?
Well, for me, it's going back to the chart with the red line in it. It's all those negative words, seeing them for what they are, and wanting to stay above that red line and just be in all those positive words. It's so doable if you just look through, as we say, look through those lenses of love and staying above that red line.
And to maintain the lens of love, some will call them rose-colored glasses, prismatic rainbow glasses, whatever you want to metaphor you want to land with on that. To stay in that lens of love, you have to be holding that lens for yourself at all times. There's deep compassion for everything that we're going through, even when the workload isn't conducive to joy. I still can find the joy here, right? It's I source from within now. It's true love, true joy comes from the inside out, not the outside in. It's how we react. Two people could look at the same thing. One person will be angered and frustrated by it. Another person will go, "Oh, look at that! How that's growing and evolving. It's getting better." Does it give you guys hope that we've gone from 180 to 200? Now we're just kind of cresting over 200? Like, I had this image the other day. We have a doughboy pool in our yard, a 14-footer by 4 foot deep. It's our salvation when it's 110 out here. And our kids love to get in it and get a whirlpool going. Like, everybody walks in the same direction. And then now you got a lazy river. You barely have to walk, and it keeps you going. Now imagine you need to stop the river going in that direction. What do you have to do? You have to stop and let the force of that water beat against your standing your ground, and eventually the water settles, and then you can begin to turn it in the other way. It's kind of like a flywheel, right? Or take your ceiling fan. It's going, and you want to reverse the direction. There's a middle ground in there where you have to dance with the completion of the momentum in one direction before you can begin to shift it in the other direction. I believe that's where we're at right now. We're trying to shift the blades of the fan in a new direction. And there is a chaos and a disruption and an uncertainty that is going to be endemic in everything around us. And if you are conscious to it, you know that it's just going to take time. Those blades will slow down, and then they will eventually be able to go in the other direction. Knowing that, you can fall in love with trust. You can fall in love with the moment that this chaos is all in service to getting us to 202, 203, 204, 205, getting not just 5% of the population, but maybe 8% of the I don't think it's all going to happen in my lifetime, but the roadmap is there. And what I believe is being asked of me and everyone that is in the same thought process with me is to just go all in on loving ourselves, on loving our gifts and talents. So this is, what are the implications or potential outcomes of this information, of this lens that we've discussed today? And how are you going to integrate this? And what's going to be different in your world because you know something? They say when you know better, you do better. What will be different as a result of this information today?
I think I'm gonna go back to breath work, to be honest with you. I think that's the one thing I can control. Actually, I've I've done a lot of other modalities, but if you want the instantaneous, breath work is the way to go. For me, at least, that's what's surfacing.
Breath work.
I'd have to agree with that. And for me, if I can get 10 or 15% of my friends to take a breath with me, it is not a goal for tomorrow, but I'm going to flick that switch, and it's going to take a little bit of time for that fan blades to go the other direction. But
that's right.
Be patient. There's promise. But if I can get people to do that and get the message why, that's the important thing. But and then who's to say that those 10% aren't going to get 10% of their friends, right?
That's kind of how this works.
It's a start. Yeah. So for me, it starts in here, and then sharing that light with your friends, the people that you love, stick your fuel nozzle in their tank and fill them up a little bit. Right?
Show them where theirs is, right? Yeah.
You're running a little empty, my friend. Let me fill you up with some love.
I posted something on a Healing Conversation page the other day, and it's one that I've shared before, but it's a study that was done by a University of Kassel, and they measure heart electrical frequencies. And they said when people are at sort of idle, neutral, their heart produces, I forget the number, 50,000 protons of light. When they are meditating on love and healing, it goes to like 250,000 photons of light. And they can measure that as far as 10 feet away from the person's body. So just being light, you don't even have to project or speak or teach or anything. If somebody comes to you and says, brother, how do you stay lit up? Where does your sense of peace and ease come at a time like this? Your light is shining bright, right? And then they're receptive, they're open, and they're ready. And so we breathe together. Heart Coherence is the Heart Math Institute. Are you familiar with that? Where they teach people how to manage their breath to expand the heart coherence, expand that photon expression, and that they can take people in a room who have no training in heart coherence, pepper 2 or 3 people who are well practiced in heart coherence into that group, and within minutes the entire group is in coherence. So we're doing the same thing with breath. It's just the most conscious way we have to settle our own nervous systems, and when we do it collectively, we are easing the collective nervous system down a notch too. So when you're breathing, each breath you take that brings your nervous system back into neutrality, into peace, you can't help but have that impact on everyone around you. Can't you sit at that poker game and you do some conscious breathing with that group? You're going to change without a single word ever passing your lips. You are just going to come into that space.
And then my app is going to start being on at poker. Shower, they're going to have to take a breath with me.
I can't wait for the day when across the planet, at the top of the hour, wherever you are, there it is. Yep. And the next 59 minutes out of that hour, you're just tuned to a higher frequency of awareness, and without having to be dogmatic or force people. And that's really the magic here of Dr. Hawkins' work. He says, force never gets the job done. Only power gets the job done. So with that, my loves, any other thoughts, additions about all this today?
Well, I think just regarding breath, I mean, we all know this, but it's the one thing we all have really in common, other than that our heart beats. But, right. You have to breathe to live.
Right.
And I choose to live in love. So
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Niraj?
You know, for me, I think this is just empowering. It's like a beautiful, quick fix throughout the day. To be honest with you, I kind of intellectually knew it, but I think I'm gonna start doing this. Like I'm gonna start clocking my breaths, like 2 breaths a day, 3 breaths a day, whatever. You know, see how that goes.
Have you downloaded the app? It's free, right?
I have, and I haven't used it unfortunately, but I want to. Maybe this will help me out. So
I think
I'll
what I'm
join your
gonna
group
do-
or something.
what I'm going to do is do another session in the next week or two, and it's all going to be about breath and the power of
Okay.
breath. And I'm going to give people a little tutorial on the app and get them all set up, and so that we can breathe in a pod together. Like I would love to see your name come up, because when I see Kent's name come up, there's this like zing to the heart. I kid you not. I like, oh, I'm not alone. We're all breathing together. We're all.
That's the one thing about the app. I mean, when you're not breathing with me, when you're not, it's not because I don't want. It's because I just didn't think to turn it on that day. If there's a way where you could push something that says, I want this to be on every day between these hours, that would be great. Because when I do take a breath, it relieves so much stress. My day is so much better when I have my app on that day. When I don't, when I forget, I come home and I'm a little more edgy. I'm a little more tense from the day, but
we've got a few seconds here. Let me do something here. Let me
my app's on now.
So here we are. So here's the app, right? So what you've got to do is you've got to go into the app and push the button to reactivate the sequence. What happens is iOS, the operating system, let's close this out. If you don't breathe with the app over, I think it's 60 hours, it shuts down. Apple puts it to the back of its resources because it says this person doesn't want to engage with this app, therefore it stops. So you have to, if it stops doing it every day, you have to go in and reactivate. We spent a year trying to solve that problem. iOS and Android, there was no way to solve that. You can set it up for the hours you want to breathe. That's breathing times, the days of the week you want to breathe. And I will show you right now that you can invite me. Niraj, have you got it?
Yeah.
Do you want to do this right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm ashamed to say that I don't. I'm trying to look at the apps. I have downloaded it. I'm trying to look at this.
You're
here it is.
For butterfly, open the butterfly.
Butterfly, awesome.
And
then, so this is it's popping up.
Okay,
like,
good.
It's coming up.
So what you can do is tap that X in the top right-hand corner.
Okay.
And it'll bring you to the map, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now go tap the little people in that top left corner, the little icon of people.
Yeah.
And now you'll see your soul pod, right? But you probably don't have me in your soul pod. So,
I don't have any. Well, no, actually I do. I think that there's you. Oh, sorry. There's you and me in this pod.
There we go. Okay, so now I want you to tap the butterfly and do a breath with me. Let's all three of us. Cam, if you're there, you can play along too. Tap the butterfly together. Let's all have a breath. We'll do it a couple cycles. And then you can tap the X and come out if you don't want to do it for the whole minute. Okay. And now you've got the map. Now go tap your little people icon. And you should.
It's interesting. It says 4 now. I love it. So I got the map of the United States and it says 4.
Right. And so now tap the little people again. And there's your soul pod. And you just had a breath with me. And so now you need to add Kent to yours. So here's what you're going to do.
So how do I add somebody, or how does?
Yeah. How do I?
All right. So first thing you have to know is you have to know your Joji number or the email address that they used when they signed up for the app. But I love to do the Joji number. So Kent's Joji is 11. And nice. I know that because he specifically asked for that. And so Niraj, I want you to go to the plus sign at the bottom of the screen here, right there.
Yeah.
Tap the plus. And now I want you to type in the number 11 in that top part where it says invite your friends, enter their email.
Okay. 11.
I'm teaching you the backdoor hack, which is just put in the number 11 and send.
I just did that.
Okay, now Kent is gonna, in a moment, he's gonna see a little red dot above his little people on his phone.
Okay.
Tap the dot.
I'm tapping and nothing's going on. Let me do the. I'll try it again. Okay. Oh, so
Nice.
down at the bottom, there's an envelope, the red dot too.
That's right. Tap the envelope.
Okay, there you are, my friend.
And there's Niraj. He says, will you be
Yes.
my friend and breathe with me? And you say, yes.
All right.
And then it says, do you want to breathe with Niraj? Invite him into your soul pod. And you say, yes.
Well, I did join.
So you joined his. Now you'll get an ask, do you want to have him join your soul pod?
Where do I have to go back to the red dot?
It should come up.
You have no soul pod invitations right now.
Okay.
So he's joined with me.
All right. So let's all tap in again. Tap in to the butterfly and see if you are now reading each other. Let's just see if that happened. All right. So tap in and then tap the X, come out and go to your little people.
I see 4 people now.
I see Kent, Niraj, and Edie breathing together. Cam, are you playing along?
I am not. My phone's about to die.
Okay. All right. Don't worry about it, love. But when you're ready,
For sure.
you can, I think you and I are set up, right? I'm
I
number
think
one.
so too.
My Joji number is 1. Kent's is 11. Niraj, what's your Joji number?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So here's how you get to that. Go to the hamburger menu in the top left. And then at the top, it says my account. And then under my account, your Joji number.
477. That's my Joji number.
477. So that's all you have to do is go back to add people to my account, put in their Joji number, push send, they'll get a notification, they'll accept, they'll send you back an invitation, and then you're in each other's soul pod. And so I go in the morning when I wake up and tap, and sometimes throughout the day, or if I get really busy, I just like to check in at the end of the day because the stats wipe out at midnight and we start a fresh day. But I can see, oh, look, there's Kent, there's Niraj. Now, this is beta. I'm going to raise money here in the next year to really upgrade this. It's a functional prototype, but it could be a lot nicer. The UI could be better. It could do there's some other cool things, but there is no other app out there that will show you how many people are breathing across the planet and where than what we've designed. So it's not quite, I'm giving it a B+ right now, but it could be a lot better.
No, I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. I mean, so just to be clear, when you press the breathing thing, I get a notification, hey, Edie's breathing, do you want to join her, kind of a thing? And then we do the breathing. Is that the way it works?
Well, nice. We're not there yet. We're going to have, one of the things I would like to do is when I open up and I see, oh, look, there's Kent, there's Niraj, I want to be able to tap it and send you a message. And it's maybe up to 3 words, or maybe it's an image box, some kind of choice that just says, I see you and you see me.
I love it.
I call that a Joji moment, a joy of joining in moment, where we meet each other and we're not alone. And then just expand that vision to millions of people across the planet, tracking their friends in their soul pod, tracking their communities. I'm not giving up on this download. It came to me so profoundly. I'm trusting it.
You know, Edie, I love this. I mean, for me right now, at least, you know, where the app is today, at least it's going to remind me to breathe throughout the day. So that's where we are today. And I really appreciate it. Seriously.
Sometimes what happens is I'm too busy to get to the phone, but in the background, like I was at the doctor's the other day having a really tough conversation and my phone went off and it was at 528 hertz. And it was just like, okay, take it down a notch. And I didn't even have to tap in. It wasn't important that anybody else had that moment with me, but it brought me back to my groundedness, my centeredness, that whatever's happening is exactly what needs to be happening. And it's all okay. I'm okay. It's all good. So, all right, my loves, we are going to work with this red line. I want to really build a movement of people who understand that there is a map, there is a way forward. And yes, 85% of the people will not understand what we're trying to do, but that doesn't matter. We still do it. We still trust that the human experience is coming into self-awareness collectively. You don't go from 180 to 200 in the span of 60 years. I mean, think about that with the logarithmic scale applied to that thinking. That's a huge jump in just 60 years. With more and more people coming into consciousness now, we could, you know, Moore's law has a whole different algorithm that we could begin to apply here. And I'd love to work with some people who do the math on these sorts of things. But, you know, what is the critical mass? Is it 2% of the population? Is it 3%? Is it 5%? At what point does the critical mass have its own momentum? And when people go, what is that thing? Why do all your phones go off like that? You go, we're just breathing more love into every moment of existence. And people below the line will go, what? You know, like, yeah, we're just breathing. Yeah. Just breathing and loving the breath, right? Being present in the moment, loving the breath. I love you guys. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. You know me well enough. I could teach every day, 8 hours a day for 6 months and never get all the ideas that I have rumbling through this head out and about. So I'm trying to break it down into little bits that can be accessed and used in the moment. So I hope that was achieved today. Yeah.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay. I had a blast. Thank you, Edie. I love you.
Today.
Thank you. I love you too, Cam. Kent, just keep breathing, brother. You got this.
That was some yummy morsels today. Thank
Good.
you.
You're welcome. Niraj, I'm so glad to have you in my world. Thank you, brother.
I
look forward to
thank you
breathing
so
with
much.
you, Niraj.
Ken, I love it, man. I love your share. Keep on breathing. Keep it going.
All right, we'll breathe together, brother.
Yes, I love it.
All right. See you next time, you guys.
All right.
Happy
Peace
Friday.
and love.
Happy Friday, guys.